I only did 2 hours. When I realized it was 5 hours, I was like, I got a dinner. I'm an adult. I have things to do. You know what I mean? A lot of these girls didn't seem like they had anywhere to go.
So Dave, welcome back.
It's good to be back. I have to say, I'm dressed. This is like hyper casual, Dave. And you've got the what do we call this jacket here?
I just say it's my Florida inspired jacket. I'm trying to go to Miami, maybe Tampa.
Yeah, you moving the operation. There's a lot of expansion going on here. I don't know that they're coming with you.
Yeah, they're building a whole new floor here. And
yeah.
I hope everybody's comfortable because I'm trying to go to our Florida office desperately.
Is that like a real thing? I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
Mentally, I'm already there. Like mentally, I've already escaped LA, but for now, I'm making it work.
All right. That's all right. Well, the jacket does have a certain like 80s, well, not quite Miami vice, but there's something going on there. Yeah. You would be accepted. You would be welcomed in the free state of Florida.
See, that's what I need to know. Just make sure it's not as racist as people try to say it is.
I've seen black people in Florida. They seem to be doing just fine, and I think you'd be okay.
Nice. We love an accepting culture.
Yes, it's very important. It's very important.
So you are back in California doing whatever
twice
podcast.
In a month. Jesus.
Wow, you really can't get enough. I have so many questions about what it's like being on whatever, because I don't know if it could be me. I don't know if I could do a 5-hour sit down interview. That seems a little aggressive, but how happy are you that you are not dating in 2023 after going on that podcast?
Well, first off, I'm extremely busy just doing a million things. So I don't have a lot of time to watch a lot of podcasts or listen to a lot of podcasts or whatever. So I wasn't that familiar with the show in the first place, other than when I told a few people I was doing it, everyone's like, oh, the whatever podcast. I watched like a few minutes of one episode just to kind of see what the lay of the land looked like. But, you basically sit at a big table with I guess it was like 8 or 10 girls. A little unclear to me what most of them are doing there. A couple of them, I guess, were sex workers. A couple of them were OnlyFans girls. A couple of them were just college girls. And you just kind of talk about dating and sex and everything. And it's kind of depressing, actually, the dating portion of it, when Brian is the host, asking them about what it's like to date and what it's like to find a guy and all this. And they were all like, everything just sounds very broken, largely because of social media, and they all know it. There's no mystery to dating anymore. We've basically itemized every little thing. You go on a date with someone, you already know all of their likes, all of their dislikes, what food they like, where they've been. You've just seen the profiles and you've done all the swiping and everything. So it was kind of to that. And I sort of knew that intellectually, but it's not that often that I'm sitting with a bunch of 22-year-old girls really hearing them talk about it. And then also, the sex worker component of it. And then, so it was, I only did 2 hours. When I realized it was 5 hours, I was like, I got a dinner. I'm an adult. I have things to do. You know what I mean? A lot of these girls didn't seem like they had anywhere to go.
Well, at least not until midnight. That's when a lot of them tend to be the busiest.
Is that how it worked? Yeah, they were very happy to be sitting there, but 5 hours. It's funny, on my show, I'm always very aware of the time. If you give me an hour of your day, my show originally we planned it to go for 30 minutes, then it got to 45, and now I'm usually doing about an hour just because the world is so crazy. But to me, if you give me an hour of the day, you only have 24 of those hours and you're sleeping for probably 8 of them. If you give me one of those hours, that's an awful lot. So a lot of these shows, even Rogan, these 3-hour, 4-hour things, to me, it's just not necessary. Yeah. And a little bit less, I think, can go a long way.
Yeah, as much as I love some of these podcasts, I just wonder who has enough time in the day to listen to the entirety of that show.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say you didn't know much about the podcast before you went on. Candace Owens went on recently.
Right.
And I was so just flabbergasted when she announced that she was going on there, because I'm like, does she know? Does she know the subject matter? Yeah. How long she's going to be there? It's just interesting.
How did it go?
Went really well. Candace is like you. She's really good at talking to people on other side of the aisle. She won some of the people over. And I have noticed ever since her appearance, there are a lot more people who are more liberal or left-leaning who've been saying I don't like this Candace Owens, but she has a point here. And
right. Well, that's how you get them. It was interesting because it was mostly about dating stuff. But then towards the end, we got into a little bit more about politics. And I could tell it's these girls, for the most part, they say some things. One of the girls was like, you live in Florida with DeSantis and he's so mean and blah, blah, blah. And then I got her to try to explain what the Disney thing. She was upset about the Disney thing. Mm-hmm. And, how he shouldn't be using state power to affect a company. And I was trying to understand why she thought that. And she just like fully didn't understand that Disney had special privileges. He didn't take away, it wasn't an even playing field that Disney and SeaWorld and Gator World were all on the same level. And then he went after one company. That would be an abuse of power, right? What he did was Disney had special privileges that then he took away to even the playing field. So he used government authority in a way that it actually was designed to be used so that the market can operate fully. And I tried to explain that to her, but, you know, it was also in a conversation about like prostitution and a whole bunch of other stuff. So you kind of get where you can get and then you let it be.
Yeah, you see a lot on that show that it's the definition of people don't know what they're talking about. And people are very loud and vocal about things that they're completely either miseducated or uneducated about. But you wouldn't know because they just say everything with so much conviction and confidence.
That is part of it. I mean, well, look, that's what politicians do for the most part. They have no idea what they're doing, or there's so many of them that are just blowhards, or forget the politicians. I mean, just especially in the last couple of weeks with the news, there are so many people on television and news anchors and analysts that have no idea about the history, that use the wrong terminology, don't explain things properly. And then you wonder why so many people are protesting the way they're protesting and screaming the crazy slogans that they're screaming and a series of other things. And it's like, well, because the whole system failed you. Your education system failed you by not teaching you proper history. Our let's say cultural level failed you by teaching you all the wrong values. Like your parents probably failed you to some extent. So then you throw these 22-year-olds out in the world and they're screaming, you know, lesbians for Palestine. And it's like, lady, like, you know, get a grip.
You know, it's crazy because as much time as these people spend on the internet, they completely use it in the wrong way. Like I thought it was interesting. You said on there how on whatever podcast, how the internet has broken people.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I think it's just broken the mind of so many people. You know, the internet is a tool the way the hammer is a tool. A hammer, you know, you can do good things with the hammer. You can build a home. You can use it for the purposes of which a hammer is made for. You can also bash somebody in the head with a hammer and kill them unjustly. So it's a tool, and that's what the internet is. There's a lot of good you can do, and a lot of good has come out. And I can't sit here and tell you the internet is so evil. Like it's made my life quite wonderful in terms of what I do for a living and all that. And obviously, you can communicate with people in interesting ways like you do. But on the other hand, all of the pieces of the internet and social media, which, as I said, in the whatever it was that I did, you know, social media was supposed to make us more social. The word social is in it, and we're social creatures, but it made us more antisocial, actually. It made us more anxiety ridden. It made us more fearful of the other, and you know, especially because it's algorithm driven, so they can cater things to you and they can really try to change your opinion on things or send you things that are going to make you upset, or you do it to yourself because you just doom scroll instead of, you know, going for good things. You know, it's funny, like I don't check comments that often anymore, but back in the day on Twitter, if I was checking comments, if I posted something, I might get 100 nice comments in a row, but they start becoming nothing. And then I'd be basically looking for the negative one. Like it's really weird what it does to your brain. One of the things that I talked about with them was how infinite scroll, you know, that back in the day, the web page, you went to CNN.com, you know, they had 10 stories and then like 20 sub stories, and then the page would end. You would just go down with your arrow and then it would end. They'd be like, no more stuff here. But then they created infinite scroll. And the guy who designed infinite scroll really regrets it because it really opened up the Pandora's box of just never getting off anything, whether it's news or entertainment or porn or whatever. It's just like this nonstop wave of something. And I'm not saying it shouldn't exist, but it does exist, and we haven't figured out ways to deal with it properly, or apparently a lot of young people haven't, at least.
Yeah, it's really creating these addictive personalities, but also these wildly insecure personalities.
Yeah.
Like I found it interesting. There was this video I saw years ago that went viral. It was someone was going around with like a camcorder in 2003, recording all the seniors. Everybody's looking to the camera, happy to be on camera,
I saw
waving
that.
and everything. Yeah. But now if you did that, everybody's like, oh, don't record me. They're hiding their faces and everything, which is crazy because these are the same people who want to be influencers, and the girls are always doing their makeup and the guys are obsessed with being in the gym all the time, like because that's what they see on Instagram. But those same people are the ones who don't want to be on camera.
Yeah.
It's weird how that's affected people's brain.
There's a real weird reckoning coming, I think, with the group of people. How old are you?
26.
You're 26. So you grew up really only with the internet, right? You only really remember the world of the internet, right? You were probably, first time you were maybe on a computer or whatever, you're 8 or something, like it was already online. Like I remember the first time, I think I told this to you and CJ last time I saw you guys, but I remember the first time I really saw like the color internet. Like it was just like words before that. And I don't even remember what that was really, but I was a senior in college and I'm not that old, but there was a whole pre-internet world that existed for many thousands of years before the internet, where we had to learn about each other, or you might go to a bar and just sit at a bar hoping to meet somebody. Or maybe you were meeting a friend at a restaurant and they're late and you don't have a cell phone. So you know what you would do? You'd stand outside and you'd watch people watching. And with all of this information that we're just slammed with now, you can see why these girls are and it's not just girls, you're right, it's guys too, but why a certain set of young people are really anxiety ridden and confused. And then, you throw COVID in on it and just an educational layer that has absolutely failed them. And so many things, you can see why they're riddled with anxiety and all of these things. And I would say the best antidote to that probably is just like maybe a weekend off the phone every now and again. I do my August thing, but find some time to just be disconnected from those things. Because as great as it is, it can either have power over you, or you can either have power over it, or you can manage it to some extent. And most of us struggle with that.
Yeah, I laughed when you were talking about the situation at a bar, because maybe I need a break from the internet, because I'm thinking if I went to a bar to meet up with some friends and I didn't have a cell phone, I would immediately go back to my car.
Right, you'd freak out.
There's no way.
Right, and think how weird that is. Like the idea of going to a bar. People used to just go to a bar by themselves. The idea was you were going to meet somebody at a bar, or you would just sit at a bar. I used to do it when I lived in LA, like years ago. Every now and again, I would just go to a bar just to sit. Not even because I wanted to meet anybody. There was just like sit alone. Sometimes you'd say hi to somebody, sometimes not. I'm not even talking about trying to hook up or anything. I'm just talking about like being a human being in like a new experience, just kind of solo operating. People used to do that. But now, really, just think about the other version, not the bar, the corner. Imagine if you were meeting your friends somewhere and you didn't have a phone and you just said to them, meet me at 7:30 on the corner there. And now it's 7:40. You'd be freaking out, just having to stand there for 10 minutes. But there's really nothing to freak out about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's what this thing has done to us.
Yeah, it's really toxic. I do remember it was like 2017, I want to say. I was challenged to eat a dinner without checking my phone once by myself just be to my own thoughts. And you would have thought I was going to be the next Elon Musk by the time I was done with that dinner, because I had to go through all types of turmoil and internal thoughts and fight my intrusive thoughts and anxiety and all of my Gen Z stuff. And then as soon as the dinner was over, I was like, wow, I really conquered everything just now.
Look at you did it.
I felt so powerful.
What's that game that people play where, if you go out to dinner with everybody, you stack your phones and whoever has to go to their phone first has to pay for dinner?
Yes. See, that I can't do.
For that thing? I don't know if there's a name for it, but train yourself for some of that, because I do sense that with seeing these girls with that level of anxiety and everything, there's going to be like a mass anti-technology movement. I feel like it's starting to come around, and I think there's going to be more of a push on that.
Do you think it's realistic that society can ever kind of go back to normal in the sense of social skills, less anxiety, a little bit less technology?
It's going to be on people to figure it out. Society as a whole, like the internet's not going anywhere, right? Like even if they took down Amazon AWS, like the cloud exists and, peer-to-peer exists, like the thing itself, the matrix in essence is going to exist to one degree or another. I would say you have to figure out what level of Neo you want to be in that. Like, do you want to be like, completely against the thing the entire time and fighting the thing? Or do you want to be in it and figuring out what parts are good and what parts aren't? Because we could do this all day long just complaining about the internet. But then there's like plenty of good things there, and that you can buy tickets to anything. You can get on a plane in a minute that you could buy. Like there's so many interesting things and ways to, when you do need distractions, which humans do need. So there's a lot of good stuff too, but it's a Pandora's box. And once you open that box, it's open. Nothing you could do.
Yeah. I mean, I thank God every day I've never had to use a map to get home. If I had to like pull out a giant map or like an atlas, like it's a wrap for me.
I remember being in the car with my parents on vacation and them trying to, like, my dad driving, my mom trying to read the map. She never knew how to read the map. And he said, that thing's upside down. But imagine if all that disappeared one day, if it actually could be taken out, or we had some EMP or something, like we wouldn't know how to get anywhere. Nobody would know what the hell they were doing.
Yeah, that'd be terrible.
Yeah.
So another thing you said on there that I thought was interesting is, and I started looking into into it more is how heavy the proportion of internet traffic is pornography based.
Was I right about the 70% thing? Because I heard that somewhere, but I kind of just said it having heard it secondhand. Was I?
So I saw a couple sources said 70, but they didn't look like they had the most research on it. But I did see a lot that said about a third, which is still a lot. You think of all the different things that people use the internet for, a third of people on there are using it for pornography.
Right.
How did we get to that point?
I mean, sex moves people, like it really does. There was this famous thing in the late 70s. Do you ever see the movie Boogie Nights with Mark Wahlberg? It's a great movie. And if you remember at the end, he's in the adult film business, and Burt Reynolds is the filmmaker, and he meets with this guy because they're either going to go with VHS tapes for the future or beta. They're going to get away from film, like traditional film. And it was porn. It was the adult film industry that pushed more people towards VHS. They decided to go with VHS, like a standard VCR, rather than Betamax. And that was, and then basically the rest of the industries, the movie industry and television, all of it just followed that. So sex has a way of leading in some of these things, which is a deep, like, psychological notion, obviously, and everything else. But it is weird to me. I mean, if you think about how many things there are to think about and to do and to all of that stuff, and that whether it's 30% or 70%, that it's so much of it's driven to that. Humans want sex. It's animals. What do animals do? Like, animals eat and want to have sex, basically, and or are fighting or looking for food or looking for sex. Like, and we are animals to a degree. So if this thing now just exists. And that also, I think, is partly why some of them are so anxiety ridden, because if this thing just exists to give you that at any time, as much of it as you want for however long you want, like, there is some inherent problem there, like, it's like anything else. Like, if you give, there was a study Jordan Peterson talks about a lot about rats and cocaine. Like, basically these scientists like put a little cocaine in with some rats, and like the rats just wanted more and more and more and more. They had no ability to like shut it off. And we're just, whether you're talking about porn or whatever people are doing online, like, there's just endless amounts of everything. So it has to eventually, and by the way, we all struggle with this to some degree, like how to manage the time. It's why I do the Off the Grid August thing, like, to not be on that all the time and to be able to sit and watch Netflix without checking your phone at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, we have to start being able to do those things, because otherwise, I think I said the phrase a couple of times, just this broken brain thing where people are just kind of mush, and that's not good.
I feel like a debate I hear all the time, especially just being out and about in LA, like, you'd be surprised how often you hear it just in casual conversation next to you at a restaurant. People always debate about OnlyFans and OnlyFans creators, if they should be respected and everything. And a perspective I heard recently was how you don't blame the alcohol companies for people having alcoholism. Should they be as harsh on consumers as they are on the OnlyFans models, quote unquote?
Well, last night there were, I guess, a couple of the girls that were escorts were also OnlyFans, girls or whatever you call it. And I thought everyone was being very, very judgy to them and really kind of disrespectful in a way. Like, you don't have to love what someone does, and you can try to figure out a way to respect them as a human. What I would say is, like, one of the girls said to me, would you want your kids going into this business? The answer, of course, is not. Of course, I wouldn't want that. But what you have to decide as a society is, like, what are things that are going to be legal? How are you going to live in a place in America, for example, where we have every culture and every color and every identity and all of that stuff, where you're not going to be jailing people just because they think different things, So you might be a Christian conservative, let's say, and this person might be a libertarian cam girl, and you may not love it, but as long as they're not breaking the law, and now we can argue about, well, what the law should be related to prostitution or any of that stuff. But the point is, like, what I was trying to show them all yesterday was, like, to just go after these girls who were doing it. There were plenty of people who were paying for it. There are plenty of people who were making money off them. They're just a piece of the puzzle there. So I thought there was a bit of an attack on them. The two of the girls seemed kind of sweet and nice to me, and seemed like they were trying to get power over their life. So, like, whether I think it's, like, of course I wouldn't want my daughter doing it, and I wouldn't want to push anyone's child into it or anything like that. But we have to just acknowledge that it is something that exists, and it's not going away. And prostitution's the oldest business in the world, basically. So you just have to figure out, like, how do you exist within that? And by the way, it's only legal prostitution, which is happening everywhere all the time, obviously, because you can pay someone for dinner with the tacit implication that, you're going to have sex with them. There's a lot of ways around it, obviously. Mm-hmm. But like, it's only legal in Nevada. Or Nevada, as they say. So, if you don't like it, don't go to the brothel in Nevada and you should be okay.
How different would you say your approach is to just some of these different nuanced conversations versus a more traditional conservative? Because I know you always say how like you're a classical liberal, you're more libertarian leaning.
Yeah.
What would you say some of those key differences are?
Well, I think what I just described is more of that. A true traditional conservative, I suppose, would want prostitution, let's say, to be completely outlawed. Like, I'm not telling anyone to go to a prostitute. I'm not endorsing prostitution or anything like that. But I understand, I guess, the difference between the classically liberal position and maybe the most sort of more religious conservative position would be, I'm a little more live and let live in that sense. And I just think that that's the only way that a society really can work, because people are going to do a lot of these things one way or another. So you have to, as I said to them last night, like, all right, you want to jail these girls? What do you want to do with them? You want to kill them? I mean, in every authoritarian society, they're always taking out the minorities. They're taking out the people who are living on the fringes. And what a good society should do, I think, is have an ideal. So you can have your ideal of what you want your family to look like and what roles you maybe want the mother and the father. You can have all of that, but you have to have a little bit of room on the margins for the groups that are not fully fitting into that, so that they can live a good life too. Because that'll give you an opportunity to really have a society that everyone can feel included in the right sense, not the way everyone talks about inclusion now, which is actually not very inclusive, right? They say inclusion, but what they mean is kind of like bow to us. I mean inclusion in like, all right, so a traditional Christian conservative actually could find a way to live in the same society with a secular atheist, as long as they both believe in the rule of law, they believe in individual rights, they believe in property rights, things of that nature. And if the secular atheist wants to go to the prostitute and the Christian conservative doesn't, then the agreement is, okay, I'm not going to force you to go and you're not going to stop me from doing what I want. So that's not a really like traditional conservative position that I would hold. So yeah, I'm more libertarian in that sense.
No, I respect that.
No.
Another question I have for you. So you've been on the YouTube world as an insider for a while. So you have seen some of the transitions in the podcast and YouTuber world. Not necessarily them just in particular, but as some examples, if you know Pearly Things and Andrew Tate and now whatever podcast, a lot of them are having these more unhinged, non-traditional conversations. Do you think that that's helping or hurting society as a whole?
It's interesting you bring that up just because of the events of the last couple of weeks and what's going on with Israel and Hamas and everything. And I'm just watching so many people that are so deeply uneducated about everything, spouting off as if they know everything, and they know no history, like people that have literally no idea, that could not point out this area in a map, that could not explain the difference, why they call it the West Bank now, and for thousands of years it was called Judea and Samaria, and that the Jews maybe came from the place called Judea, which basically means the place where the Jews live. Like there's so much ahistorical nonsense, and so many people. And look, I say this on my show all the time, like I'm trying to tell people the truth to the best degree that I can. And I'm obviously going to make some mistakes along the way, and I have no problem correcting myself or whatever. But it's unfortunate in a weird way that so many people have to tune into alternative news. I would prefer, I used to say this all the time, like CNN, it's like, just don't be completely horrible. Mm-hmm. New York Times, just don't be completely horrible. But why is it, last week when there was this supposed Israeli airstrike on the Gaza hospital, I saw the immediate headlines and I was like, I doubt they hit that hospital. Like, let me just wait a minute. Let's just see. So how come I didn't fall for it? Am I like such a freaking genius? And then over the next couple hours, the New York Times had to change their headline 3 times until they finally admitted that it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that failed from within Gaza, and about a quarter of the rockets that Hamas and Islamic Jihad shoot end up in the Gaza Strip because the rockets aren't that great. So they're bombing their own people in essence. But New York Times also, you probably saw this, their front page article about it also showed a picture of a bombed out building that wasn't even the hospital. So it's like, there's so much propaganda, there's so much dishonesty that it lends itself to people turning to alternative voices. And that is good in that, it's been widened, the amount of people we can hear from. But the problem is so many people, and it's not just this topic, obviously, but so many people are so uneducated on so much of this that I worry what that's going to do. Because if you think it's weird right now, like for example, like you did a good video I saw you doing, just walking down the street talking about what was going on with Israel and everything. And it's like, if you think these people are confused now, like play this out 5 years from now when the mainstream media is worth even less. And there are more voices, and like where we will all be. Will any of us agree that water is wet? Like that's basically where we'll be at.
You know,
and I don't know what to do with that.
Is water wet? That's a debate within itself. Have you heard that debate?
Oh, no, I was just kidding. But is that
it's a real debate.
I'm pretty sure water's wet. What's the counter?
Because they'll try to say that for something to be wet, water has to be put on it. But the water itself is water. So
I do not accept that water is wet.
I'm telling you.
I think we can end this now. Yeah.
That's unhinged.
Yeah, that is unhinged. Water is wet.
Well, my very last question for you. Do you know what 15-minute cities are, and what do you think of them? Yeah, well,
15-minute cities are basically this idea that I think really is coming out of China originally, where you're basically, what is it? You have like, is it 2 miles? Are they mostly 2 miles? I don't know the exact proximity, but that basically you would have anywhere to anywhere in the city, 15 minutes, you would have everything, and basically you'd be locked in. I mean, it's basically a hamster cage for humans. That's really what it is, meaning that you wouldn't have to leave the 15-minute city to go to the dentist because your dentist would be there. You wouldn't have to leave to go to Target or wherever you were going. It's a really dangerous idea. You know, in China, they're literally locked in, right? Like they have doors with locks that are keeping people in these things. And you can see really why there's this odd confluence of people that want like 15-minute cities and very controlled environments, and that are also trying to push us into the metaverse and also want us to eat bugs. Like it all sounds kind of conspiratorial, but like if you wanted to control people, you'd be like, oh, we'll give you everything you want. And guess what? You can get access to it all within 15 minutes. And by the way, you're gonna have to strap this thing on your head all day and probably shouldn't eat that much meat, but we do have this goo that you can just suck on while you've got your metaverse thing strapped to your head. I mean, it's basically, we're veering towards like half Ready Player One, half Matrix, half Hunger Games kind of thing. But I would say almost anything coming out of China at this point is deeply dangerous. I'll tell you one other thing that'll seriously disturb you. When I started locals.com and we were, you know, you have to fundraise obviously for a startup, and we'd go to a lot of these Silicon Valley, like major guys. And almost everybody was trying to push like Chinese ideas on us. Like, why don't you do more like what WeChat has? And WeChat is their like all-in-one app. It's sort of what Elon's trying to do with Twitter, which I actually do think is dangerous, that you would really only need one app for absolutely everything. And the problem with that, of course, is once you've centralized everything onto one app, if they kick you off that app, or you can't get monetized for some reason, or the bank account's broken, whatever it might be, now you're basically screwed out of society. And then, of course, they have social credit scores there where, you know, your social credit score goes down because you said something that was against the party line, and they're putting your picture up in that 15-minute city. Then no one wants to associate with you, or their credit score will go down, their social credit score. So no, freedom is good. And even LA is better than a 15-minute city.
I couldn't agree more. And, you know, with the social credit scores and all of that, I'm very anti giving too much power to anyone or anything. I already feel like Google, for example, has way too much power, especially since they own YouTube and they're the main search engine. They're on every single thing you do. You can even go on other sites and search, and it's still Google. And the way they hide information from us, like we have the right to see other forms of information, but between them and NewsGuard, they're intentionally keeping us so in the dark. And I find it really ironic that the same society that's constantly talking about, oh, they're trying to take our rights away, they're the same people who are so willing to give our rights away. They're the ones who want us in these 15-minute cities so that we are controlled by these entities. And
well, we have to blame ourselves because, you know, you get on an app and nobody has a freaking lawyer sitting with them when they're looking at those terms of service that you have to click accept on, right? Like you don't keep a lawyer on retainer, like sitting next to you like, hey, I'm going to download this app. Can you take a look at this? And we just click accept, and then you kind of just throw everything up in the air and you pray. Yeah,
I've probably sold my soul like 3 times with those terms and conditions because I never read them.
But you got a fancy jacket.
Well, thank you. I got this out of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Dave, thank you for stopping by again.
My pleasure.